1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 testing testing. There we go. Okay, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon, and really chuffed, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon to kick off the afternoon sessions. We've got comedy writers, producers, directors. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for Nat Saunders and Jane Serafinowicz. Woo! Thank you so much for coming up from that there London to come.
And Weymouth.
And is that where you were from?
No, it's where I live now.
Is it really? I'm from Bournemouth, so I'm just down the down the way.
Okay.
There we go.
We should hate each other.
Yeah, we should. we should. We won't.
Nice.
So just to start off with, I'm wondering, a lot of, maybe aspiring writers, aspiring sort of like producers, of how you actually sort of like get into the industry and what your sort of like starts were. Because I'd imagine it's, sometimes it's not a normal route, is it?
It is never normal. And you guys are already way ahead of us because we're both dropouts. I lasted one term of university.
Yeah. I beat Nat. I lasted a seminar and a lecture, and I quit during a lecture. But
so all of you in the future will be our bosses. But yeah, there are so many different ways in, and James went kind of like a semi-traditional route by becoming a runner early on and getting into the industry through the kind of
yeah, by just kind of getting people coffee is basically the first rung on the ladder.
And being bullied.
Yeah.
Which you're not allowed to do anymore, so that's good.
No, it's frowned upon, I hear.
It is now frowned upon, but it was not back then.
Yeah, I think one of my first jobs was getting you coffee on we worked on this sketch show called Big Train. I don't know if any of you guys seen that?
There we go. We got some hands.
Two hands for Big Train.
That is a good number of hands for Big Train.
Yeah, and so was it your first writing credit?
So I got lucky early on in that I wrote a bunch of sketches and sent them off to some production companies with no agent, no expectation, and then a couple of them just liked the sketches, and then suddenly Big Train and this other show, Smack the Pony, accepted some of our work, and I was suddenly on a TV set for the first time, completely like a rabbit in the headlights, not sure of what my role was or what. I think I was an extra in a few sketches, and then you.
And then I gave you.
And then you got me a coffee.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about playing Zelda, Majora's Mask on the N64, and I was like, oh, this nerd is into the same stuff as me. But then we didn't see or speak to each other for about 7 years. Yeah. So, because we're going back about 20, 25 years now.
Yeah, it's a long time. But I was a runner on Big Train, and but I also got my first writing credit by. I just wrote some material and then gave it to the producer of the show, and kind of said, have a look at. I was so scared, just because giving something to someone else to read, especially like a professional, is terrifying. But
imposter syndrome never goes away. We feel like we shouldn't be here now.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
right.
But temporarily overcoming your imposter syndrome and actually putting something that you've done that you maybe feel like is good or you're proud of or you feel fits the remit for the person that you've given it to is sometimes it is the thing to do. You've got to choose your moments.
Yeah.
You can't just chuck stuff out at people relentlessly, because people will be like, whoa, stay away from them. They'll just throw scripts at you. But if you pick and choose who you give stuff to or who you speak to and when, and then you've got the thing they need at that time, it can open a door. And once you get your foot in a door, you just keep that foot there.
Yeah. Try your best.
So was it always sort of comedy writing that you both wanted to get into? Was that always sort of growing up? Was that always was that the dream?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, watching, all my favourite shows were all comedy shows, like Fawlty Towers and Brass Eye and Alan Partridge, and and luckily I got a job at this company called Talkback that made Brass Eye, Smack the Pony. What else? Big Train. What else did they do? Oh no, they didn't do Father Ted. Anyway, most of the good comedy from the 90s was made at Talkback, and then a year after watching it on TV, I was working at that company, and it was just couldn't believe it. And then I got.
How did you get the job there?
I can't remember. I think think I knew someone who was working on. I did this show called the Armando Iannucci shows. Do you know? Yeah, and one of my friends was like an AP on it, and they needed a runner. Luckily, they needed someone who could drive, and I couldn't drive, and I didn't tell them that I didn't have a driver's license.
Lying is really
well,
important.
no, it's not lying because they forgot to ask me, and they gave me the job, and then they were like,
"Okay,
here's
with the truth."
Yeah, because like being a runner, it's like getting people coffee and just driving shit, people and shit everywhere. And luckily, they didn't sack me. They got someone else to do that, but yeah, then suddenly I was working with all these people who I'd like idolized, and then I like with Armando, and they like. Do you guys know Brass Eye? Have you ever watched Brass Eye? Yeah. So I loved that show and the Day to Day, and then when I was at Talkback, there was all these rumors of Chris Morris doing the Brass Eye special. And I was like, okay, I got to get on that. And so I just made sure that when like Chris had this secret office in Soho, and all of his mail had come to the Talkback's main offices, and then someone would have to take it to his private office. And so I just made sure that I was the one who always took his mail. It's so lame, but I just wangled my way in, and would just have like boring conversations with him, just showing that I was really keen. And luckily, I got the job on the Brass Eye special, and then I had an idea for that, and to his credit, Chris gave me a writing credit on that, and that was my second.
And you got to play multiple pedos.
Yeah, I'm about 4 different paedophiles in that show, and I'm like the paedophile disguised as a school. Who else am I? There's a couple of others, and I'm also like like children who were abducted. There's like school pictures of me in it. I think like quite at the beginning, and I wasn't allowed to tell anyone about what we were doing because it was so covert, and it would have ruined the filming if people had known that Chris Morris was doing this new show. But during it, I asked my mum to get pictures of me from when I was a child, like school pictures and stuff and family pictures. And she was like, "Oh, what's it for?" And I said, "Oh, just for this show that I'm working on." And then when they watched it, and my mum just phoned me, and it was like, it was like I'd died. She was just so heartbroken because it was these like fake news stories about like this kid was abducted and molested and stuff, and it was pictures of me as a 4-year-old. Anyway.
But again, same question to you, was always wanting to be a comedy writer? Was that always, the trajectory for you?
Like James, I did love comedy, but I was kind of, I really wanted to go into film, and particularly like genre stuff like horror. That was sort of my love. And like, 20 years ago in the UK, the film industry, particularly horror, there were very few things going on. So to get foothold was impossible. But getting through the comedy route, there were ways in, because comedy in the UK is often super low budget. There are more people likely to take a chance on stuff. If you do a bit of performing too, commissioners just love writer-performer combinations.
And there were loads of sketch shows.
Back then, sketch shows were everywhere. They're not now, but then sketches are everywhere because basically comedy on TikTok is effectively just that's the new sketch show. So for me, and now it feels like it's only taken 22 years, but now like James and I have some horror films in development, and we have horror dramas and things on our slate with like the likes of the BBC and Warp Films and places like that. So it's like it only took 22 years to get
where you wanted to be.
What I want to be. So so hopefully I can enjoy it for a couple of years before I just die.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. So how, you said obviously how you first met, but how did this sort of partnership sort of like come about that you decided then to sort of like work together?
Well, I was running a comedy website called Funny or Die that it doesn't exist anymore, like the UK version of it, and it was basically like an endless sketch show where you would just constantly making stuff and sticking it up. This is about like 12 years ago. And so I just needed people and brains and scripts and also to do stuff for nothing.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of that in the industry.
so I was like, who do I know who would work for nothing, but also give me like 100%? And we'd always got on, hadn't we? And
well, I was like writing sketches for your brothers. So James's brother, Peter Serafinowicz, James produced and wrote a lot of his sketch show. And so I was contributing to that, although I don't think you actually ended up using anything.
No,
right?
no, it wasn't your best material.
No, it wasn't. But and I had a different writing partner at the time who we're both still friends with, and has gone on to do good stuff as well. But
not as good as
us. It just was one of those things where we just immediately got on. Like, if you're going to go out there and if you're planning on being a writer or a creator or producer or anything like that, finding someone who like you can have a laugh with, who you completely 100% trust, who you don't mind giving a script you've written to, and then let them do their stuff to it, fill in the gaps that you've missed, all those kind of things. Then it's like
lots of gaps.
It's like, it's magic, and also it means you can take on more work
because there's two of you.
We are spinning like so many plates at all times, and we can split apart, rejoin, hand each other over on projects. We're writing scripts, pitch decks, we're like practicing verbal pitches, we're taking meetings. There's so much stuff to do, so being able to spread it over two of us is like a dream.
We're good at splitting a script in half. Right, I'll write the first half, and I'll write the second half. Then we'll swap over and read through. And like the one thing is like you just can't have an ego about stuff, and that's something that we've never. We just if you just think that line needs to come out or this needs to be changed, we never argue about it or. We're kind of in agreement with everything. Yeah,
and I think if one of us sees something that we don't particularly like that the other one's done and is proud of, like, unless it's sort of like a battle, a hill you really need to die on, it's like, no, let it go. Like, nothing's that important. Nothing's that, there are so many ideas flying around and so many different ways to approach anything. So you don't always have to be completely on the same page. You can sometimes kind of be like, okay, well, this isn't necessarily my favorite of our projects, but you love it, and I'm, and similarly, when I'm passionate about something that you're not 100% into, we'll still give each other 100%.
Yeah. So I always sort of imagine you sort of like in a darkened room together, and like you have to come up with an idea.
Yeah, I don't like seeing his face, so darkened room, and if he can face the wall as well.
So it's almost like the Elton John and Bernie Taupin. It's sort of like you send him one thing, he'll do a bit, and then send it back.
Well, a little bit, but like especially. Like when, like pre-COVID, we would be physically in a room together, but now, like I live in Weymouth, Nat lives in London, and we just have Zoom on all day, and so we've gotten really used to just. So it feels like we're in the same room, and there was even one time when, we'd been working on this. We were pitching this show in America, and so we were pulling really late nights. Which is why what happened. But both of our wives came in and found us. We'd both fallen asleep with Zoom on, and so we were just snoring at each other. But that's kind of like how normal it's become, and it's just like, right, it just does feel like we're in the same room, doesn't it? It's brilliant because
it's literally like seeing your faces. It's like over an office divide.
Yeah.
It just doesn't doesn't matter.
That's excellent. Yeah. That's excellent. I like that. So once you've got your script, and I'm intrigued about how you actually then get those produced and what the steps you go through to actually get something to screen, because I would imagine there's a lot of times that it falls down at certain areas, but what that process is actually like.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously it starts with an idea. It'll be either me or Nat will have read an article or a story, like someone's tweeted something or something that will just spark something, or we've watched something that we'll think, oh, hang on, if that had gone this way, this is a really, or there's something in that episode that they didn't really expand on that we think could build into something.
And I've always thought that like ideas like on their own are sort of like 10 a penny. Like most things have already been done. So like having a great idea, like some people are really protective about their ideas. They're like kind of like, oh no, I've had it. Like I'll let you read it if you sign an NDA or something. And I'm like we'll have ideas all day long. It's just how you convert them, and what you add to them and stuff. It's like how you develop them that becomes the special thing that you do want to kind of protect and look after. So there's a lot of gatekeepers between having an idea and getting and that idea appearing on television, and 90% of them fall by the wayside and don't make it onto the television.
But I'd say like nothing is ever dead, and so we've got a lot of projects like on the go, and I just feel it's like Mario Kart, and each car is a different project, and there'll be something that we'll be in the lead, and you're like, right, that is our next thing. That is the thing that's going to convert.
And someone fires one of those red shells.
Yeah, exactly. And then suddenly it's just like, oh, fuck, someone's been sacked and that project's suddenly dead. And then something else comes that you completely forgotten about and has come up in pole position. And, and if you've had an idea or if you've done work and you've written something down, it's never dead. And we've found that all the time.
So in our case, we will have regular meetings with production companies or commissioners, and like sometimes it's hard to get those meetings because they're busy and they've got plenty of stuff on the go, and then sometimes they'll take a meeting with us and they'll be like, come on guys, what have you got for us? And then we'll reel off some of the ideas that we've got kicking around, and then if we get like an inkling that even one of them is slightly to their taste, then it's like, okay, we'll get a pitch deck to you within a week, and then we'll like put everything into that pitch deck, flesh it out, make that idea feel more real, like use imagery from other stuff to kind of build a picture of it. And the pitch deck doesn't have to be massive. It's like normally like 10, 12 pages. We do it in Google Slides. Use a lot of imagery from other films and TV shows. Do some character breakdowns, do some synopsis, plot, theme, all that kind of stuff. And we just present it. We don't have a script at this point usually. We just try and get them interested in that idea, because what we hope for is a script commission.
Well, should we just talk about like exactly what the
order of
a pitch deck? Because it's just a good way of breaking something down into like compartments, so it just doesn't feel like I'm writing a whole thing about a whole show. It's like, okay, I'm doing like a synopsis, then this bit's characters, and then so. Oh, go on, because you do that fights them all.
Do you do all the pitch decks?
Yeah,
I do like doing the pitch decks. There's something quite, I don't know, when I get in the zone on it, it's actually really fun. It's like a jigsaw puzzle that you're putting together, and ultimately you're trying. It's like a sales document for a TV show or a movie. So you start like an arresting cover, like a good image, and a good title, all of that stuff. And a nice log line, something that's, in one sentence sums up what this is and makes the person want to turn the page. Page 2, like a tiny little summary of what it is, the elevator pitch. So, a paragraph that, introduces the show and again whets the appetite of the person reading that pitch deck.
Yeah, and says like it's, The Godfather meets,
Yeah, meets The Godfather 2.
Yeah.
And then... and then after that, you throw in a bit more imagery, so you're building a picture in their mind of like what the show could be, and then you use imagery from successful films and TV shows rather than ones that tanked, because then the image of success appears in their mind, and they think they might be able to keep their job and make money for the company they work for, and then you might want to go into a bit more detail about what the actual story is, and maybe you spend a couple of pages. Again, you're not like doing it scene by scene. You're basically, it's as if you're
strokes.
Describing a movie to someone, and you're doing it in 3 minutes. And then after that, you can do some character breakdowns, and maybe you go on Google image search and pick some actors that are hot right now, or maybe people that you just feel like embody that role. These people are not attached to your project. No one minds, because a deck is not in the public sphere, so you can put anyone into it. And then you're helping build the idea of who that character is and what they mean in the story and the theme. And so, you do a bunch of those. And you never really want to kind of like overwhelm them. So you choose, say it's like an ensemble comedy. You pick your best 6 characters, maybe 8. you don't want to like do page after page and like, there's like 20 characters there for them to kind of like their brains just turn to mush after.
Yeah, you've got to assume like the commissioner's like a toddler, you know. There's lots of pictures, bright and short sentences.
And then you don't need to like, you know, write a biography for each character. It's like a paragraph or two will do. You know, you want to get broad strokes, but then you want to kind of like put in the things that makes that character feel like they maybe sparkle a little bit and maybe are different to things we've seen before, but then also the same, because you also want recognizable, you know, characteristics and things so people can say, oh, that character's like Han Solo. So you have, you kind of like, by this point you've built like a world in your document and you've populated it with its characters. And then the next bit is up to you, but you can go into more detail and actually do, okay, well, look, now I'm going to spend the next few pages actually doing a full detailed breakdown. We do that sometimes if we really feel we need to. Sometimes when you hand something like this in, they'll be like, great, if you've got a more in-depth version where there's more like more of a series Bible, that's like a bigger job. That takes a lot more time, and like if they're not paying you any money yet, then you can normally, you know, just kind of say, well, yeah, I'll give you a series Bible when you actually give me some money. But for this, you know, for the sale part of the process, you know, you can do that, and then you can maybe do a page or two on the theme. People want to hear theme. They want to hear why this is relevant, why the story is being told.
Why now, and why you're the person to tell this story. Those like, because they'd like it to feel personal. I mean, like Baby Reindeer is like a really good example of that. Of, you know, I mean, you know, allegedly on a true story, but you know, that's why it felt like, okay, he's the only person that could write that show because it happened to him.
Now, if you're writing a show set in space, chances are you haven't been to space. So you have a couple of options there.
Some of them might have been.
Some astronauts may be trying to write TV, maybe astronauts among us now. But you either lie, which is fine, because we all lie on a job application, and you can lie when you're doing a pitch deck. You can say, my dad went to space and this story is about him, and that is probably a lie. Or you can find a way to still make it about you, because you can say, well, no, I've been obsessed about space since I was a kid, and here's a picture of me as a kid dressed as an astronaut at a fancy dress party and all that kind of stuff. And they still, their little hearts still go, oh, this is a personal story, we can commission this. So there are ways to still make something that feels like it's fantasy or outside of, you know, lived experience, still feel like this is something that, you know, that only you could tell, and that you're the person to bring this show to light. And then the main thing that we normally get, and this covers comedy, drama, horror, thriller, all of the genres that we try and work within, is that because we live now in this kind of like globalized TV landscape, that nobody really wants a show that will only play to the locale that it's set in, but they want it to feel really specific to the locale that it's set in. So what they always ask for is something that absolutely feels truthfully local, but will play on the other side of the world, because the themes of the story, or the kind of the storylines or the characters, feel universal. And so we hear this like relentlessly, no matter what the genre is. It's like small, you know, worlds that feel completely real and localized and really believable, but like the storytelling like will literally play anywhere on earth and everyone will get it. I mean, obviously, you know, there are exceptions to every single thing that we're going to say and have said, and there'll be plenty of, you could absolutely throw loads of stuff at me that completely disproves what I've just said, but I'm talking about for the most part.
So, you know, you've gone all through that process, a script screenlet, and obviously if you're producing as well, you obviously have a look at, do you go back to that first thing where you've picked out talent initially, and are those still the ones that you go for? I'm thinking sort of like, if you know, first time I spoke to you guys was around Sick Note, and obviously Rupert Grint in that one, and then obviously Truth Seekers with Nick Frost, and obviously you've had a relationship with Nick and Simon Pegg for a long time. Are those people in your minds? No. Okay.
With Sick Note, because we were developing that with HBO initially, and I think like, who did we want in it? I think we wanted, it was like Michael Richards. We wanted I wanted for Dr. Glennis, and I can't. Anyway,
Sick Note is a very bad taste show we wrote that is on Now TV and Sky in the UK.
And it's going to be on Netflix.
And in
soon.
the new year, it's going to be on Netflix over here. And
Has anyone seen it?
There we go. 2
Yeah?
minutes.
And do you love it?
Yeah, it was funny.
Correct.
You think of a lot of people when you watch it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, everyone's horrible in it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a show about a guy who fakes having cancer, which is obviously very bad taste. But then luckily James got cancer earlier
I've
this
had
year.
this
so
year, so now I can say that.
now
yeah.
you can say you
It's
were the person to
bulletproof.
write this
Yeah,
8
yeah.
years ago.
This is a personal
Yeah.
story
'Cause
now.
I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. But in that instance, we were developing it in America first. So all of our original casting choices were American.
Yeah.
And then when
Right.
HBO gave it back to us and said, actually, we don't want to make this after all. And then Sky luckily stepped in. And then, so it was all brand new, like the casting choices. And then we were doing like read-throughs and
I think
casting stuff. And
Rupert, like sometimes you get like, especially when a project has got momentum and a channel's come on board, and so you know it's going to happen, then it puts it in a different league, and then suddenly you get offered people, and you find out, oh, David Schwimmer's looking to be in a sitcom again, or stuff like that, which is how we got Rupert, because he'd finished doing all the Harry Potter films. Do you know those films?
you guys would love Harry Potter.
and it was like, oh wow, fuck, Rupert Grint, we absolutely didn't think of him at all for that role, but you go, okay, he's a big star, and also he likes the script. Brilliant, let's get him in.
Also, we resurrected Lindsay Lohan's career.
And yeah.
Lindsay was in our show.
That's true.
Next thing you know, our show ended up on Netflix. Next thing you know, she's now making like 2 Christmas Netflix films a year.
Loads
Yeah.
of shit Netflix films.
Yeah, so that's down to us.
Well done.
No, she hadn't been in anything for a while before
Yeah.
that.
That's true, yeah,
But she
No,
was
she was
great.
great, yeah.
So it was like, fun to be a part of that renaissance.
Yeah.
We're going to throw it over to questions in a second. But I just wanted, because obviously, most recently you've written for sort of like live performance and for Peter Serafinowicz's Brian Butterfield tour. Yeah. Is that process different to writing a live show? I know we had, a couple of years ago, we had the Gibbons brothers here and talking about writing for Partridge, and then also writing for Partridge Live, and how that changed as the tour went on. Was that the same sort of feeling on that tour with
it was
Brian
really
Butterfield?
nerve-wracking going into it, because we hadn't written a live stage show that's like an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
And the first time you put it on its feet, stuff that works well in a rehearsal or on paper, or just with there were 5 of us that were on the writing team for that. And, we were laughing, but we were like, but is this going to translate? And so some stuff on those first few gigs, there were some kind of like moments where it was like, okay,
I can't remember. No, I think
nothing bad, but
No,
there were things that we were.
First one did so brilliantly.
We were like, as the tour progressed, we with Peter would like highlight the bits that weren't working so well, or just were a bit unwieldy on stage.
Did anyone see it?
Process.
We did it at the City. What's it called?
City Varieties, it was on it.
Did
anybody go?
No.
It sold
It
out.
was really good.
Maybe you
Sold
guys couldn't
out.
get tickets. Maybe you tried and just.
It's coming out soon on streaming, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, it will. Well, in some form, we might. I really want to. Do you know the character Brian Butterfield? So if we don't get a streaming deal, we're going to make some VHSs and sell them. It just feels like, or some picture discs or something,
Yes, laser discs.
yeah. But it was. Well, the way it came about was we got approached by a tour promotion company, because we hadn't even thought about doing him live, and he was such a. I think we'd made like 10 sketches, and so when we added up actually all of the footage of that character, it was like 8 minutes or something,
right?
And then to go, oh, we're going to do like an hour and a half show with just him on stage, but I love that character, and I've done his Twitter account for like 15 years or something, solely because I love watching The Apprentice, and I love making jokes through Brian about The Apprentice. That is literally the only reason why he's kind of stayed alive. And then to go from that to doing an hour and a half live show, it was really daunting, wasn't it? But rewarding because it did really, really well. And blowing our own trumpets, like the audiences really, really loved it, and loved that character.
Also, it's very different when you put out a show that goes out on, say, for instance, Sky, and it's a comedy. You don't hear anyone laugh, and sometimes you don't even you get a couple of reviews.
But
maybe.
Nat's really used to that, aren't you? Anyway.
So used to it. So like seeing a joke you've written, get a laugh,
get a response
from a few thousand people, as we did when we sold out the Apollo. It was like, wow, 3,000 people all
I know, and
it's
we got a standing ovation as well, and it's like, fuck, that's great.
We are quite good after all, because sometimes it is like, pissing in the wind. You just don't get any feedback, and something that you spent years making goes out on the telly and it does all right, but you don't see people watching it. You don't see people enjoying it. You might try and go on social media and get a few people but
it's mainly just, this is shit. What is this? Who the fuck commissioned this? This is shit. Yeah. You're a cunt. That's literally. I can remember that's what.
We've both been called that.
Is it difficult as well writing for your brother? Is that is it
he's
sibling
an
rivalry?
Yes.
Is it?
No. Do you know what? It was especially with that, because he is. Like God, when he's in the costume, because he's in full prosthetics and a bit like a fat suit, and so he looks completely different to how he is normally, and he just becomes that character. And we did signings and stuff after the show with Peter still in character, and he would just improvise for an hour. And he just loved it. I love that character so much.
But also, people around him would be like, "Hey, Brian, it's great to meet," and they have conversations with him, and they're just having conversations with. That's not him. That's a person pretending to be someone else. But you fall for the magic of it. And I did. We were backstage every day, doing all bits on the show, and whenever Peter was Brian, I was just like, I'm in the presence of Brian
a real
Butterfield
person.
Now. This isn't Peter.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great. I do, because we've got a merchandise shop that I run.
Little plug.
Yeah. and
Christmas is just around the corner.
It is, yeah.
But when people email me if there's a problem with an order or whatever, and I email them back as if I'm emailing on Brian's behalf, it just makes me laugh, saying, "Yeah, I've spoken to Brian and blah 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 blah," and it's literally just for me and that person, Anyway.
I love that. Right, okay, we'll open up to questions. Lovely Richard's getting that there. There we go.
Hi guys. So as comedy writers, and specifically kind of black comedy writers who do a lot darker stuff like Sick Note and Misery Bear, I was wondering if you think that black comedy is struggling at the moment as with the rise of
the world's fucked.
Cancel culture. Cancel culture and being more aware of people's sensitivities towards, traumatic subjects, whether, the golden age of black comedy is kind of past us now, because that paedophile episode of Brassai probably would never happen now. No. Jam, things like that, they just wouldn't happen.
But I think it goes in cycles. So I think at the moment we're in a really kind of hypersensitive period of time. But it will pass, and I think it stems back to when Russell Brand was on Jonathan Ross's radio show, and he did the thing about Andrew Sachs's granddaughter. Yeah. I think that was the moment where people started kind of really question what was entertainment, and they really fucked it, because at the end of the day, it was really offensive what they did, but also it just wasn't funny. And black comedy can be offensive and funny as well at the same time.
I think we still have shows at the moment that are incredibly black in tone and go into some dark places, but because they don't necessarily punch down, I feel like they can still be funny, and they can still touch on some pretty extreme themes.
Yeah, It's Always Sunny is
I mean, they still manage it. Yeah. And I think I just think it makes you I think it makes us better as writers, just not go for the lowest common denominator stuff, which, you know, is tempting. There's stuff in Sick Note that if we were to do it again now,
God.
I'd probably go, I probably wouldn't do that.
The opening of Sick Note, we're like, oh
so
my God, I know,
so embarrassed by it.
Not embarrassed, but we're just like, God, we just wouldn't do that now.
No.
You know?
So there are things that, you know, you just go, but at the same time, like, I feel like we can all just go, okay, well, that was made then, we've grown a bit, we've moved on, we think differently, but yeah, like, and I will apologise. Like, that's the other thing. When people like get a little bit cancelled or they get their stuff brought up and they go, well, I'm not apologising because it's just like, no, it's fine to apologise and go, actually, yeah, sorry that offended you, and then move on. Like, that should kind of be the end of it. And I feel like at the moment, like, some of the stuff on our slate, I still feel is like super dark and a bit twisted and, you know, but I don't think at any point we're ever making fun of the issues that we're presenting, and we're usually making fun of the kind of people that would make fun of those issues. So I'm not saying we have our cake and eat it, and I still think there are moments when a producer we're working with, will, like, you know, pull us up on stuff, and then we'll be like, oh God, yeah, thank you, because that we would have probably not realised that could actually cause offence, because you can't be aware of all the different kind of offences that there are out there.
Yeah.
So we just try our best, but at the same time, we don't self-censor to a degree where I ever feel like we are doing it.
No, good question. Okay, Abby.
So I have two questions. A lot of like comedians struggle, like they hit a point and then struggle to like come up with new jokes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And also because you're comedy writers, do you ever get like writer's block?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. It's terrifying, and especially trying to come up with something new. You just think, God, how the fuck am I going to come up with any good ideas ever again? Especially like after like what was like after Truth Seekers, you go through that process and you go, because it didn't get recommissioned for like a number of reasons, but you just go, God, how are we going to fucking do that again? And then something just happens, and then you're like, oh right, it's this, and you know,
can get really burnt out. Especially like sometimes, like, because I said earlier, we've got more horror and genre and thriller stuff on our slate now, and it's, you know, I don't want to like disparage drama writers, but it's so much fucking easier to write drama than it is a comedy. Like, you don't have to come up with a joke every other line. You don't have to like end a scene on a gag. You can actually just let a scene end, and it's like, wow, like. So it is genuinely like, sometimes it's nice to pivot to something where you're not trying to make people laugh.
It's easier to make someone cry than laugh.
Because then you want to hit cry marks every 3 lines in your script.
You never get a reviewer saying,
this wasn't
the
sad
drama,
enough.
saying, oh well, I didn't cry once, it's shit, you know. But you'll get it with comedy going, I never laughed out loud once, it's a load of shit.
One start. But then I think the other thing is with writer's block, and I have to remind myself this because I have it all the time, and there'll be days where I'm like, I barely got a word down today. And I did everything. I cleaned my house from top to bottom instead because I was just. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. I've never done that. But
slept all over your house.
Finished Grand Theft Auto again. But I do find that you have to remind yourself to take the forward, thinky part of your brain off the thing that you're desperately trying to do, and then go and do something completely different. And then what happens is your brain just reconfigures, and the ideas sort of like secretly come back to you. And so I always like just remind myself to go and read a chapter of a book, or go for a walk, or
go and play Call of Duty.
Or do something that just means that I'm not there going, oh, please, words come. And then at some point, like, your brain will reconfigure, and then it'll suddenly be like, it'll calm down.
You'll remember something, like we text each other all the time, and like articles and stuff, and you just go through and something, you'll go, oh yeah, I remember I had that idea, and then it'll just spark something. But it's kind of like, it's not putting pressure on yourself to come up with something.
Or you just boot up ChatGPT and say, write me 200 jokes.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
No,
right.
Because we've tried.
It doesn't work.
They're not good jokes.
Raj.
Hi, thank you. So I'm from the era of Smack the Pony, Drop the Dead Donkey, Fast Show and all that. And I kind of feel like we didn't have, it was fantastic, and you don't really get comedy like that anymore to a degree. And I think part of that is we didn't have all these streaming channels and all this available to us now, and what I call America being over here. Do you think it's become a bit of a saturated market with all these like new stand-up comedians coming along and loads of comedians on social media? You know, like that's
well, people are famous now that you've never heard of, and it's a different world out there. Like back in the day, if someone was famous, it meant everyone knew who they were, and now famous people are famous in their own, world, and they'll have millions of fans, and you won't even have heard of them. And that applies not just to comedy, but to music and to films and all kinds of stuff. And everything has we're not saying anything is good or bad here. It's just different. And so that kind of globalized multi-streamer, there's a billion things to watch and you can't find one thing. I'm finding that all the time at the moment. It's like so much choice. And yeah, I'm just there with my tea going cold going, what? I'm sorry, darling, I'm trying to find something. But it's like, we get oversaturated, and it felt simpler back in the day because probably what it was is that those few shows you just mentioned and a couple of American imports like Cheers and Frasier and whatever were probably all we had. Yeah. And so we loved them so much and probably watched multiple episodes, and now we're just the carousels and deciding rather than deciding what show you're going to watch, you're like, which streamer shall we put on tonight? And so it's just changed everyone's way of consuming stuff. And for us, it's weird because, we had a rough time during COVID and then the writer's strikes where a lot of our projects hit brick walls and we were failing to sell any new stuff. And it was like, well, hang on a minute, there's billions more TV being made right now. Why aren't we making any of it? It used to seem to be easier 15 years ago when there were only 4 channels, and yet we could always find work. And so I don't actually have an answer as to why that has happened. No. But it's just very different. And I think there's so much great stuff out there, and there is new great stuff being made. Like my favourite sketch show is I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, and that's new and coming back for more, and that's a Netflix thing. And there are far less sketch shows these days, and that's down to how expensive they are to make. Because if you've got a sitcom, you can have 3 locations and you've got a half-hour episode that's over those 3 locations. But a sketch show, you need multiple locations, you need multiple characters. There's multiple kind of moving all the lorries and equipment and everything like that. It's just so much harder to make them. So it is sad that because that was a way for new people to get their voice heard. The sketch shows. And there are just a lot less of those opportunities.
But it'll come back. It just cycles. You get when The Office came out, it's like every show was a mock documentary. Yeah. To the point where no one wants to watch mock documentaries anymore. And it was the same with sketches. Because it's like Little Britain and The Fast Show and Smack the there's loads that I can't remember because they were shit. But and so
I think I worked on some.
Yeah. And so things just go in and out of fashion, but it will come back again, Yeah.
I think we've got time for one more, Liam.
All right, gents. Cheers for coming, and also cheers for putting me onto the Brian Butterfield diet. I have never felt better. Everyone thinks they're funny, whether it's with their pals or in front of an audience or whatever. Really simple question. How do you know when you're not funny?
That's not.
Oh God, that's a tough one.
I mean, look, it is the most terrifying thing, writing something that you think is funny and then giving it to someone else, hoping that they do too. Because it honestly, it's like, if it isn't, it's like an affront on your...
Yeah. I mean, there'll be times when James will have sent me a draft of a script that he's done, and then I'll just see I've had a barrage of texts. Was it okay? Was it all right?
I know, yeah. And it's just like he hasn't
I haven't read it yet. Give me a minute. You sent it 5 minutes ago.
I know.
I
know, because I'll caveat it going, it's shit, and it's a first draft and blah, blah, but then... Any criticism, I'll be like, no, that's the really good bit.
Also, if you're in a writer's room, I mean, it's that can be a bit of a bear pit at times.
Yeah.
So if there's 7 of you around a table, and then you've got an idea, everyone that's got a slight bit of imposter syndrome or humility, they always start with, right, not this, but, and then they pitch the thing that they really hope everyone's going to love. But they preface it with not this, but in order to protect themselves. But what they really mean is, please like this idea I'm about to say. So, like, I think everyone has it. I mean, we've worked with some of the funniest and properly, famously funny people. And we've been with them when they've been hilarious, and we've been with them when they've not been hilarious.
Yeah.
No one's on all the time. And then some people who are clearly not sparking, but still trying to get laughs. I mean, that's kind of that's a sad situation for everyone. I think knowing when to shut up when you're not being funny is like a really valuable tool to have.
Yeah.
And also, like, no one wants to laugh all the time either. Like, sometimes when, if you're known for being a comedy writer and then you've been in a writer's room all day and then you've had to write some scripts, you're not going to be a barrel of laughs with anyone after an exhausting day. Like, the last thing you want is to laugh or create laughter. You just want to, just shut all the noise out.
Arseholed.
Yeah. So yeah, the truth is no one really knows. But if people are laughing and they're not laughing out of fear or just like pity, and so it's good to sense whether or not those things are going on, then chances are you might be funny.
Guys, I could literally talk to you all day. I really could.
Fun,
but we've run out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, Nat Saunders, Jane Serafinowicz.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so next up.